Get this, guys. President Donald J. Trump told a crowd of supporters in Iowa on Friday that 1 year from now, July 4th, 2026, the 250th anniversary of this great country, the US of A, what's better to break it in than to put a damn octagon on the lawn of the White House? We are talking about this. It's not clear how far along the planning for the event is or how definite it is that it'll happen. And the UFC spokesperson said more details would be released in due time. But this is very serious and very real, according to a report from NBC News here. I want to play first the video of Trump speaking this into existence, and then we'll get LT's live reaction.
So every one of our national park, battlefields, and historic sites are going to have special events in honor of America 250. And I even think we're going to have a UFC fight. We're going to have, does anybody watch UFC, the great day in the world? We're going to have a UFC fight. We're going to have a UFC fight. Think of this, on the grounds of the White House. We have a lot of land there. We're going to build a little, we're not, Dana's going to do it. Dana's great, one of a kind. We're going to have a UFC fight, championship fight, full fight, like 20, 25,000 people. And we're going to do that as part of 250 also. We're going to have some incredible events, some professional events, some amateur events. But the UFC fight's going to be a big deal too. And to
Luke, like, what world are we living in? This is so bizarre.
Yeah. I'm not sure what to say about this, to be perfectly honest. I mean, there's like a million things to say. And
like,
then,
in one thing, it's the sport that we cover for a living, that pays our family to eat, is going extreme mainstream. But it's aggressively
sort of.
extreme.
Yeah. You know what? I would actually, before I even say anything, I would actually much rather hear from Long Island Luke on this one.
Wow.
Because, well, here's what I basically get from this. I don't know his political affiliation, which is, I think, actually tells you a lot. Like, I don't think it's a forward part of his identity. I think his sensibility is much more in tune with, like, the common UFC fan. So, Long Island Luke, hearing this, hearing the president say that, and then getting this news, what is your reaction to this?
This does nothing for me. I don't know. It's kind of like when Turkey was like, we're putting on a boxing event in Times Square. Like, okay, cool. That's it'll be nice scenery, but like,
you care about the fights, right?
What is that? That does nothing for me. Yeah, I'm not that big into politics in general, so I feel like I'm really. Yeah.
I feel like it really depends on who you ask, to be perfectly honest with you. If you ask MMA fans, I think, I don't know if the majority of them, but many of them would probably say, hey, that's pretty cool. Right? I mean, that's certainly a different scenery.
I mean, it's not every day our country turns 250 years old. Like, this is a kind of a major milestone moment.
Sure.
We're bringing that in with the damn octagon?
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
like,
well, there's one question, which is, what on earth does UFC have to do with
freedom?
July 4th?
Yes.
It doesn't quite line up in that particular way, but
it lines up in that can right there. I'll tell you that.
Screaming freedom.
Yeah,
that's what it is. So that being not the thing that we're focusing on, I think MMA fans would probably say, and again, I cannot speak for them, but I'm just trying to read the tea leaves. They would say that it's certainly a cool backdrop. It's certainly a question or a marker of, to the point you raise, mainstream visibility. But I would actually argue that's not quite right. The UFC didn't get to the White House lawn such that it actually happens. And by the way, the UFC and the Trump administration both had said that the plans are serious, but they did put a little wiggle room in there that it may not happen, or details subject to change, or we'll see. So they're going to give themselves a little bit of out if they actually have to move it, because I do want to talk about the logistics of it.
You can't put 25,000 people inside the fences, right? That's not
you
smart.
Could. Yeah,
what about that?
You could.
So I've recently been to the White House for the first time 2 years ago on family vacation.
Okay.
And when you come from the side of the Washington Monument and walk that way,
right? So that's the South Lawn you're talking about.
South Lawn. There's that extra wide open field. What is that? The ellipsis?
So it's called the ellipse. Yes.
The ellipse. Excuse me.
That's on the other side of East Street, facing Constitution Avenue.
Wouldn't it be better to possibly put up some fences and put?
So
an
I looked this
there?
up. I actually looked this up. I actually looked it up last night. Has there ever been a sporting event that was basically controlled by the White House that took place either on the South Lawn or the ellipse.
Outside of like a makeshift Special Olympics like baseball game.
Yeah, I mean, President Clinton put a quarter-mile track. Obama had a basketball court put in there. So,
Clinton had like a blowjob booth. It's like a competition, but yeah.
That aside, just indulging a president, and Nixon had obviously a bowling alley installed in the White House. But outside of that, in the 19th century, the Washington Senators actually played some games on the ellipse.
Ooh,
that actually was a real thing. But in terms of the South Lawn, it's like if you live in the area, the White House, no matter who the administration is, they'll put up every year for Easter egg. For Easter, they'll do an Easter egg hunt. Little kids can sign up, and then they do a lottery, and then you can go. They do that. Obama had like a 2016, almost like a South by Southwest thing there. It had 2,000 people on there. It's an 18-acre property. You couldn't put it on the Lafayette Square side. You have to put it on the South Lawn side. You could do it, but this is one of the other questions I would have, which is, that is a logistical nightmare, because you're going to have to close off key portions of downtown, which you can do. But
who's paying for this, though?
Is
it the U.S. government, or if it's Turkey?
I had several friends lose their jobs in Doge cuts, and I'm expected to believe this is an effective use of taxpayer dollars. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me, if I'm just being honest with you.
Would we need Turkey to come in and like who's?
If there's a benefactor, that's a little bit different.
Who's more ill-fitted for the Oval Office, Elon Musk high on ketamine or Turkey?
Turkey knows a little bit more about the fight game.
That's true.
I guess I would just say this. I think MMA fans are going to be real jazzed to have this kind of a placement in this celebration, to be on the White House, to have MMA front and center. But the point I want to raise previously, which is the one it's like, oh, it's like fully mainstream. Yeah, sort of. But not really. The UFC didn't get to this place by staying with their big tent approach. For most of my life, they had a big tent approach. It didn't matter tall, short, white, black, rich, poor, southern, northern, western, eastern. It didn't matter who you are. There was the argument was there was a space for you inside MMA. That is not the claim that they make now. The claim that they make now is they don't say this explicitly, but they have alienated, we've talked about this a million times, a portion of their fan base by going all in on one side decidedly. That's how they got here. And I just think the other thing I would ask folks to consider is, listen, I don't really know what's going to happen between now and next July, whether this will happen. It might just be no big deal. It might be a huge deal. Again, I think for MMA fans, they're just focused on what kind of card are we going to get, right? And then that looks kind of cool. And I understand that. I'm just going to say it again, dude. The UFC going all in on political polarization in the way that they are, I don't know what and I'm saying this genuinely, I do not know what the long-term risks are. Makes me a little nervous for the long-term viability of the sport. It does. It makes me a little nervous that they would go, we're going to go small tent and then hardcore focus on that. I don't know what that does.
I mean, it's like, I love MMA, but do I want an octagon on the White House grounds on the country's 250th birthday? And that's independent.
Where the fighters are going to win and then go absolutely fillet Trump.
But that's it. I was going to say, for me, it's independent of who's in office. To me, it's like everybody's kickback is, oh, if you say anything negative about Trump being cage side and being worshipped at UFC events, then it means you automatically love the other side. I don't want Biden there. I don't want Obama there. I don't want any of those guys there. It's one thing to be in attendance and wave, and the camera goes on you, just like when a president's throwing out the first pitch from the front row of
then you don't see him again.
A crowd, and then you don't see him again. I wonder, would this have the same? Like, is the reaction to this rooted specifically in how people react to that side of the political line, or would the reaction be the same if it was Joe Biden?
So I didn't have a whole lot of a reaction. My friends who live in DC all texted me. They're like, "You going to go to this?" And I'm like, I would be denied credentials on 2 levels trying to get into this one. But I actually read around the internet just to see what people said, and of course the reactions fall on partisan lines too, right? So the right wing is pretty happy about it. The left wing considers this quite tacky in the end. The thing that I would just ask folks,
it is tacky as shit, to be fair.
It's a little monster trucky.
Yeah,
a little monster trucky.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, what does that say about America? You know.
But in the end, I think the thing I would ask folks to consider is, beyond some of the things we've already mentioned, is just that. What again? I'm going to ask, what on earth does this have to do with 4th of July? And like, when we're celebrating this, are we actually celebrating the independence from the British, or is this a way for a guy who's got? I'm sorry to bring this up, and we can move on from it. But a guy who's got authoritarian tendencies to have praise lavished on him on his literal fucking lawn by a company that has no problem doing business with authoritarian regimes. Like, it just feels to me like actually pretty much a continuation of that on down the line. I don't know. So in the end, my view is wherever you fall politically will absolutely color how this looks. The last thing I'll say is, like, when this kind of got announced, the least law-abiding UFC fighters that we have were all like, me first!
Let me be the first. So the one me first that got everybody fired up, as they should, was recently retired former 2-division champion and greatest of all time, Jon Jones, who pulled out of the possibility of a multi-year build toward a Tom Aspinall heavyweight title unification fight to then do this on Twitter, which obviously felt like he was sticking a finger in the sore of all MMA fans. Not only is the I like this in response to an AI image of John on the top of a cage wearing Apollo Creed trunks, celebrating a victory over Tom Aspinall, maybe as a recreation of the Revolutionary War in some ways. You know what I'm saying? And then he put out that he's re-entered the UFC testing pool with his quote of, figured we'd keep everyone's options open, end quote. If you're Dana White after what he just pulled, although for the record, Dana did not dunk on him after he pulled this shit, right? Dana was sort of like,
I thought he took it pretty well.
He took it pretty well. He moved on. If they allow Jon Jones back into the octagon, am I being a Jon Jones hater, or am I accurate in saying it's absolute bullshit for him to give up the heavyweight title, create a 2-year soap opera, possibly lie publicly, according to Dana, about the specifics of that, and then be like, oh, fighting on the White House lawn? Dude, I'm back in. Let's go. Fuck off.
Yeah.
Log off and fuck off, right?
Don't need to see you ever again. Goodbye. I'm good. No, I'm not interested in him fighting, not interested in storylines around him. Didn't even want to put... Brian and I debated about how much we even wanted to put this in the rundown. It seemed relevant enough that we couldn't ignore it, but less than zero interest in any of this. And partly, I also think partly there's two things happening. One was this news about the White House. The second part is that I think he just realizes that his retirement went really, really bad.
Oh, how could it have?
And how and everything that he thought was beautiful got torched.
Oh, you mean there was no video package talking about his greatness? And all this
and
stuff?
so and then the fans being like, yeah, good riddance. Like, there was a lot of that. I think he's trying to claw a little bit of dignity back if he can find some. But
so he still wants super fights with Derek Lewis and Jamal Hill, as he famously said.
Absolutely uninterested in ever seeing him compete in any facet whatsoever.
Well, he's not the only person who we're, I can't say largely uninterested, because I've been trying to make fantasy matchups with Conor McGregor lately, just to use that name to put over the next superstar. But Conor McGregor also jumped at the opportunity to return at the White House. Would be a very intriguing offer. It would bring me back in to focus on my return correctly. McGregor would also say, Luke, that after he wins the Irish presidency, the history of going to the U.S. and competing on the White House as the Irish president is what would motivate him. He didn't have that same motivation when he had a broken toe ahead of the Chandler fight. But is this the only way it's going to bring, like, you know, Michael Chandler's like, see you at the top? Did he mean the top of Capitol Hill? Is that what he's talking about? Is this the only way we get McGregor Chandler if it's headlining this White House pay-per-view?
Seems like that would that to me, whether there's one question about, like, how interested are you in McGregor at all? And by the way, by July of next year, he'll be just days away from 38.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're talking old, right? Old. Independent of the question about whether or not you want to see him compete at all, it does, though. I mean, if they go through with this, you would imagine he would be on the card if he actually made himself available, right?
Let's put any political leanings or tackiness, which is really what I'm focused on. I mean, like, we're already so deep into combat sports and politics being in just a gross marriage across the board that it's hard to avoid. So, but separate from those feelings, let's say this happens. And let's say, as Donald Trump said, we want championship fights. We want, big names on there.
Like a good card.
How do you book this given the setting and the connection to both America on America's 250th birthday and the political side of it? Are you putting only U.S. stars in there? Because Don Davis put out a tweet that he got rightfully ripped for, which was basically, hey, at Donald Trump saying, hey, here's a PFL super card that could be the setup. We could do PFL in the afternoon, UFC at night. And it was all of his Russian fighters, basically, you know what I mean, linked together on there. Would this be American stars only? Would it be American against British to recreate that 1776 feel? What the hell would we do here?
I don't know. I don't get it. I mean, I can get that Conor would be something of a...
Conor Chandler is the main event?
Yeah, I mean, again, Conor is also another reprehensible figure whose participation in the sport to me is absolutely unnecessary nor desired. But again, I would imagine that a number of the fans would disagree. So you would imagine he would be on there by virtue of sport significance. But I don't know how you matchmake the rest of it, because you got Kayla as a champion, but how many more times is she going to compete?
Sure.
How much time does she have left? Beyond that, I don't know. And it's like, even then, it's like, well, what American contenders do you have? I mean, it'll be hard to say what you have 9 months from now, because that would more closely mirror what you could do with the card.
Do we not have any male American champions at the moment?
We don't have any no male American champions.
So Kayla is the only female, right?
Only one period.